Hello, welcome everyone to the MuseScore Café. My name is Marc Sabatella, and I'm with Mastering MuseScore. And this is my MuseScore Café, the regular series of in these chats that I do, where we talk about some aspect of making music using MuseScore. And I'm stalling while I look up the date because that's my thing. It's July 22nd, 2020, as I record this. So, welcome to those of you who are here watching live. And yeah, I usually like to pick a topic to talk about and demonstrate some things, get some feedback. And the uh, and I good morning. All right, good. So I'm looking and making sure I'm playing back as my use, and I'm good. All right. So the topic that I picked for today, I will say, is kind of vague. It's just based on some things that I've been thinking about lately, and whatever. That's the point of this. I get to talk about what I want to talk about. By all means, please, questions about any old random thing you want are going to be fine. Um, but I, there's a lot of things that have been sort of spinning around in my mind lately, for a variety of reasons. Stuff that's just going on in the world, stuff that's going on with what I'm doing, etc. Um, and one of the things that kind of hit me recently is the idea that we hmm, what does it mean to practice composition? I mean, MuseScore is a tool not just to think about as being musicians. We have a sense of what it means to practice our instrument, right? I mean, most of us, if we're using MuseScore at all, most of the people watching this, I assume you play an instrument or you sing. And especially if you play an instrument, you spend a significant amount of time practicing that instrument, or at least have at some point in your life. I'm going to be honest, I don't spend a lot of time practicing anymore. I just don't. I'm surrounded by music constantly, immersed in it completely, but as far as actually sitting down at the piano and practicing, not as much as I used to. And I realized that I turned off my camera, and that's at some point last time. I'm just going to put it back on because what the heck. There I am. Just because I feel like there's a personal element to what I'm talking about today, and putting the face to it just feels like it wants to be there. Okay. So, okay, how do you enter letters? Oh, okay. So, yeah, the very specific. Let me finish this thought, and then I'm going to come back to that. So, the idea that we practice our instrument, and if you're a singer, a lot of people don't necessarily practice that much until you get serious about it, and then you do these warm-up exercises and other things. But this idea that there's this separation of the time that we spend practicing our instrument versus the time we spent doing something productive with it. I think for me, this is why I say I don't practice anymore so much, because that separation doesn't exist for me as much anymore. I think whenever I sit down at the piano, I am kind of doing something productive that's not just practicing. But maybe practicing is supposed to be productive. And so I want to talk about how that relates to composing also, or arranging, or any of the things that you might do, transcribing, any of the things you might do using MuseScore. So the question was entering little letters to show. Oh, okay. So good. So I'm going to open up a score that I was using as an example for something else recently. And oops, I didn't mean to open that. I meant to open something else entirely. So let's try this again. Courses. I want to show. Okay, so what we have here is a bunch of something that was entered for that Corona Canon project, and then I did a lesson with some students talking about analyzing these melodies. And one of the assignments was to then enter in these analysis of the non-chord tones. And question is how you do that. Well, let me enter some notes here. And entering random text is always the most typical way to do that. Is you select the note you want to do it and then Control T to enter text. And I can say that that is PT for passing tone. So Control T for text. If you don't tend to like to remember keyboard shortcuts, this is on the text palette. So you can select a note and click on staff text. And then that adds staff text, and then you can double click it to say what you want. Now when you do this, you'll see it entered it in black. And the person who did this had it done in red. So I don't know how specifically he did this, but I can tell you how, oops, I keep alt-tabbing, I don't mean to. Actually, Control-Tab. If you don't know that, and I know it, but I know it intellectually, but don't remember it often enough. Control-Tab is a shortcut to flip between open scores. Okay, so Control-Tab. I don't know how he did his version of this, where these are red, but I can tell you that if you go to the inspector here, you can click the color and change it to red. And now it's going to be red. It's blue right now because it's selected, but as soon as I click off it, you'll see, no, it's really red. Then, if you're like, well, I know all the text I'm going to add to this score I want to be red, or all the staff text, you can hit the Set as Style button here. And now you notice it updated all the staff text. It doesn't update the title, just the things that were added as actual staff text. One of the things, though, do I have it in here? I created a workspace for myself, me, and in my own workspace, I created some customizations. And so, oh, this doesn't have that version in it, does it? Okay, I need to go to a different workspace because this isn't the computer I use the most often. I've mentioned that before. This is my Windows computer. I use it when I'm doing the Café because it works the best for that, but I'm mostly using my Chromebook these days. But let me switch to the Music Education workspace here. When I do that, you'll see there is an Annotations palette here. And the Annotations palette has some red text already entered in it. So even, let me undo that change I just did. So now my text is black by default. In fact, I'm going to make all that text black. If I click something and then click the red text here, you'll see I get red text. And you also see I've got yellow highlighted text and things like that. So this Annotations palette has that stuff there. And if I get to the right spot, I can show you how you can install that thing. Let's see. Because it's useful, and I talk about it some. I'm going to try to make some of this stuff. Yeah, so I mentioned all the stuff that's going on with me. I'm in the process of sort of redesigning some things in my website and trying to make some things easier to get to. And one of them is going to be this, extensions. All right, so here I have this extension that it's got instructions on how to download and install it. And when you do it, you end up with these things. And so this is kind of useful for educators. Or anyone kind of working in an educational environment, including students. So I want to paste that into the chat. Top that guy out. And in a minute, I will have that link. Okay. Education extension. There it is. Okay, so one of the things that I was talking about here had to do with practicing composing, but the idea of practice is the idea that you're trying to get better at something, and so this ties into anything having to do with education. So I get to look at this in the context. Look at that question in the context of the actual theme of the day. And doing analysis is itself a type of practice. Taking some music that exists in the world and then saying, hey, I want to understand how this works. That is itself a form of practice, a form of practice for creating music of your own. So you're welcome. Um, so uh, there are so many different things. Like for me, I use MuseScore for a lot of different things. So I use it, uh, for one thing, right here, doing these cafes as a way of talking about MuseScore. I'm using MuseScore, right? But I use it, I teach music, and I use MuseScore to create teaching materials. That's something I do with it. I'm a composer. I use MuseScore to compose music. Obviously, I use it to arrange music. I use it if I want to transcribe music. Like if I'm, as a jazz player, one of the things we do is take solos improvised by other people and then write them out, or maybe just songs that we hear that we on recordings that we want to learn and we want to produce sheet music for. I do that much more often than I do it with improvised solos. But so these are all different things I use MuseScore for, and they all have their own skill set. Composing is a different skill set than transcribing. Transcribing is a different skill set than creating educational materials. They're all different. They're all different skills, and they all are things you can sort of practice or devote time to. And so I'm sort of curious of the people who are watching live, what are the things that you actually do? And if you think about the things that you actually do with MuseScore, I mean, or maybe not even with MuseScore, with music, and then we look at maybe how you make the right time for doing these things. But so I would love it if people would just put in some comments in the chat about this. Meanwhile, I want to talk about a little bit of some of my own experiences here. One of them was I spent a number of years playing at a jazz club in Denver called El Chapultepec. And when I played at that club, I I was the pianist in someone else's band for a number of years, and then eventually I became the band leader. There was sort of a changeover. It was like a different band, but same band, I just became the leader. So at that point, we started focusing on originals. And between me and the saxophonist in the group, Keith Oxman, we didn't exactly make a formal thing that said, hey, we're going to write a new tune every week, but we kind of did. And literally, for the course of the 2 years or so that we were doing this, we each wrote an average of about a tune a week. And when I say a tune, so a jazz setting, we're talking about this. We're talking about a lead sheet. So a lead sheet, for those of people who aren't really familiar with what that looks like, is just melody and chord symbols. And now that we're in MuseScore 3.5, I have MuseScore 3.5 release candidate installed, which will hopefully be a real release by next week. You'll hear the chord symbols play, and it's going to play them back reasonably believably. So let's just hear a little bit of this. So that's the tune. And so I wrote this for Keith. Keith actually, while we were doing the gig, over the course of those couple years, he actually got cancer and had to drop out for a while and had the chemotherapy and radiation, all that. And when he came back, this was the piece I presented him with his first day back. So we played this for him. Now, as far as that went, before 3.5, the playback of this without the chord symbols was so disappointing, I didn't worry about things like actually adding a swing. I added shuffle here, but I didn't actually tell the playback to be swing. I also didn't line the chord symbols up with where I wanted them to show up. Sometimes it's easier reading a lead sheet to just see the chord symbols every 2 beats and not have them a little off kilter. Because during the melody, they might line up here on the and of one, but during soloing, I might want it right on, I mean, and of two. While soloing, we want it on three. And so it's, for simplicity, I might just put it there, but it means the playback is a little off because really I wanted to hear this chord. So let me, if I copy that or cut that and then paste it here and do the same here, cut, paste, and if I add myself a swing text from the palette, and I play these first couple measures again, that's a little more what it's supposed to sound like. All right, so good. I'm seeing some comments here. So anyhow, this is a piece I wrote for Keith during that time, and I also wrote a piece for our bass player, Jeff Cook, who went, well, we had a few different bass players during this run, and Jeff was someone who had lived in the northwest somewhere. I want to say Seattle area, but I actually forget. He had lived in the northwest area, and then had moved to Denver, which was actually where he had family. But then, and played with us for months. But then he decided to go back to the Northwest, and so I wrote this piece for him as a goodbye to Jeff. So this idea of writing a tune every week, some of these tunes I continue to play to this day. The Oxman Returneth we recorded with Keith. Home Cooking, we played that gig, and I've played it a handful of other times. It hasn't really had the legs the other one did, but I like it. I do keep playing it. There's some though that got written and hardly ever played again, because when you're writing that much stuff, they're not all hits, and that's okay. But I wrote them with the idea of being performed. Right? I mean, sometimes you can write stuff that you have no intention of ever seeing performed. That really is just practice, and I'm going to show that in a minute. But first I want to come back and engage a little bit and see what people are saying here. So practicing technical studies, working on soloing, playing keys, and learning songs. Okay, so that's all stuff you can do at the piano, which is great. So then one question is, well, as far as creating music notated wise, how does that play into things, or does it? Because if you're gonna have to notate some things, is that something that you want to find the time for? If nothing else, so you don't get rusty using MuseScore, right? And maybe it makes sense to say, well, can I work in a half hour a week or whatever it is of time taking something that you've worked on and notating it in MuseScore so that you get that skill of keeping your MuseScore skills up, but also whatever it is, the reason that you're putting it into MuseScore, developing that skill also. So I'll come back to that in a second. So now I've seen, just manually entered an oboe part from Forrest Gump Suite, transposed to soprano sax. So, okay, and that is a thing in itself. Taking a piece of music that's already, I assume it was already there written out for oboe, and you were entering it into MuseScore. That's another definition of the word transcribing. Sometimes we mean transcribing from audio. Sometimes it means transcribing, copying written music. I wish there was actually a separate word for that was in common use, but I don't know that there is. But re-engraving, maybe, recopying. Music copying actually is part of what that's about. That usually has to do with going from the score to parts. But this idea that you would go from a written part for one instrument, but then want to transpose it for another one. Or maybe you just want to hear the playback, or the original copy was kind of hard to read and faded, and you just want it to be easier to read. So that is, like, if that is something you do often enough that's something that you just get practice doing it, great. But what if you just said, there's all these things that I might someday want. Well, what if you just said, I'm just going to do those now, and then get maybe joining some sort of online community where other people do this sort of thing, and you do stuff for each other. These are ways that you could maybe incorporate that into I don't know, a sort of a regular routine of doing things. I guess that's what I want to encourage, is that people find things that are worth doing to them and then get better at doing them, get more productive at doing them by, I don't know, doing them with a certain focus, with a certain regularity. I also see a comment here. Yeah, so I'm looking forward, Colleen, to talking about your Fly Me to the Moon thing, I guess probably next week. Sequence, make music on computer. Oh, okay, so by sequence, you mean using a sequencer, Eric. So a sequencer program, meaning a program that you create music with that's mostly a MIDI-based thing that's more about how it sounds than how it looks. So you might use MuseScore to enter the notes originally and then transfer it over to your sequencer so you can tweak the playback, is what I imagine you're doing. So I assume when you talk about doing that, you're talking about creating some sort of original music or at least arranging things in an original way. And I'm going to come to that in a minute. And then, so I'm learning MuseScore mainly to prepare lead sheets for Ukulele Club. Ah, cool. Yeah, so for producing lead sheets, I find, MuseScore is really well suited for that and really has a lot of really nice features for it. And having the fact that we now have the chord symbol playback just makes it that much cooler. So it's in the 3.5 release candidate if you go to musescore.org and then hit the download. In fact, I can just type that right into the chat. Download 3.5 release candidate. I can type it faster than I can get there. musescore.org download. That'll get you there. I promise. I don't promise. I need to click it and find out that I did it right. Yeah, looks like I did. Good. And we everything we wanted to implement, and we think we fixed all the bugs that needed fixing, and we think this thing's ready to go. I say that now that the release candidate came out, there's been a couple of bug reports, things that were fixed within the release, things that are broken in the release candidate that we are going to fix before the final release. There's like 3, and they're nothing too crucial that prevent anyone from using it. But we really want people to install it and kind of help us test it. So by all means, I encourage you to do this. And then when the final release is available, which would probably be, I don't know, a matter of a week or so, is just a guess. The release candidate, I definitely encourage people who are at all invested in MuseScore and wanting to see it get better and just excited by it, go ahead and install that now, start playing with it. And if you find any problems that are like new problems, these are the things we do want to fix before the release. But it will be out. The release will. Okay, so yeah, okay, I was going back here. All right, so I want to talk about some other things that we can practice. So, since you mentioned ukulele, there is a set of ukulele chord diagrams, fret diagrams, that someone has made. I don't have them installed, but since the subject came up, where's my fret diagrams? Here's my fret diagrams. The ones that come by default are all guitar diagrams. So this is a guitar C chord, not a ukulele C chord. Well, someone on the forums has made a ukulele version of that, and you can do this yourself, and probably you have already if you do this a lot. But since the subject's come up, ukulele chords, MuseScore. Let's see, someone actually created, oh, this looks good, MPAL, that's the thing. All right. So someone on here has actually created, here we go. Look at that. All right, so I'm going to go through this process and we're going to see. Ukulele chords, I'll click it. And so let me go to this first. I want to put that I'm going to put it in my MuseScore 3 folder. I don't think there's a better place to put them. We don't have a specific place to put them. So let me first get you the link to this and get that in the chat before I forget. So there's the link. All right, so did I save it? I think I did. So now going back to MuseScore, if I come over here and let me go to my own workspace. If I now go here and I right click right next to like fret diagrams and say load palette, I will be able to load that palette. And so I need to get to that same spot. It's right in my MuseScore 3 folder and Ukulele Chords. Look at this. It was created by someone who doesn't speak English, so the palette itself is not in English. Oh, by the way, I'm going to drag that sucker. Yeah, I guess it's in a good spot. So when I click that thing, I get some ukulele chords. Let's add one. There it is. This is the C chord. Now it doesn't show up with the chord C because I think this was this palette was created before that was a thing, before it was possible to add chord symbols to the diagram. I'm not sure if this is actually going to work, but let's find out. I'm going to add a C to that. And now I'm going to drag this back to the palette. Control, Shift, drag. And there's my version in there. Let's see if, when I add that, if the C remains. It does. So there you go. That's how you customize your palette. If you guys haven't seen that before, it's a pretty cool feature. And so really, and I look at this and say, well, gee, this looks kind of tall and skinny, and I don't really necessarily want it to look like that. Well, let me bring my inspector back, F8, and here's where you customize all of this business. So if I really don't want to see that many frets, I don't need to see 5 frets, maybe I just want to see 3 frets is good enough. Because really most of these ukulele chords, well, we'll say 4. I'll use 4. Does anything get chopped off? I don't know. What I could do is then, can I actually make that a style setting? Yes, I can. I can say style setting, just show 4 strings. And then all of the ukulele chords, or all the fret diagrams will be limited to just 4 frets, if that's what you want. I'm just pointing out that if you make a change here, you can hit the set as style to make it apply to everything. And then once you've kind of set up one the way you want, you can just copy it back, and then you can delete the old one. Bye-bye. Oops. I got to select it. Then I can delete it. All right, now it's gone. And now I have just C, and I guess this guy is probably C7. It is C7, but of course it hasn't been customized to add the name, so I'd have to do that. Lines are horizontal, fret numbers on each line. So this is just the number of frets being shown. So that's a fret horizontally. The horizontal lines are frets. So I just basically changed how many frets actually show. Vertically, those are the strings. So because when I look at these, they just look oddly tall and skinny to me, but I'm not used to reading ukulele chords, and maybe that's what they traditionally look at. But it just seems like none of them are really using those bottom strings, and so those bottom frets. So I feel like I don't necessarily need to see them. Maybe on these with the bar at the bottom, I would want to see it just so it doesn't end with the bar. That's a bit about customization there. So one of the things though that you might want to practice if you're doing lead sheets is just doing a lot of them for music that you might eventually want to play, and you'll get faster and faster at it as you do these things more. And as you do it more, you'll also discover the thing. Face is blocking the view of the chord grid. You're right. So the chord grid was there. Okay, bye me. Full screen. Let's go back to the chord grid. So anyhow, there's my chord grid. That's what happened when I changed the frets, was the number of horizontal lines here. Because as I go up, I get these if I make this go more, so instead of just 4, I turn, come on, 4, up, up, up. You know, see, as I'm adding more frets, the diagram gets taller, and I don't really need it to be any taller than 4 personally, but maybe 5's more standard, I don't know. Okay, so I want to talk about another aspect of something that is worth practicing. A couple things that are worth practicing. So anyone who's coming from any sort of classical background of like writing music in a classical setting, or maybe studying like in a school setting, one of the things that comes up really often is this idea of four-part writing, that you might have a melody that you want to arrange soprano, alto, tenor, bass. And the thing is, it's done as an exercise to learn part writing rules. And it's presented as if it's this thing you do while you're in school and then it never has any applicability. But I don't know. I'm here to tell you that it does have applicability. It applies to a lot of things that I do writing for ensembles, where essentially if I'm writing for a string quartet, that's 4 voices, soprano, alto, tenor, bass. If I'm writing for a choir, that's 4 voices, soprano, alto, tenor, bass. If I'm even writing for piano, I might not limit myself to just 4, I might have 5, but the same sorts of principles apply to how we do this. And it's really worth practicing that as a skill. So actually taking melodies and practicing writing some 4-part arrangements. You've all, well, some of you have probably seen, but I'll just, because I do have them handy, show wherever I actually have, of course now I can't remember where I might have put them, education, somewhere or other I have, I know what I should do, I should actually let Windows search for me, right? Susanna SATB, that's what I'm looking for. So some of you have seen this before, but I'll just play a little minute of this. So I'm not going to claim that this arrangement is anything that anyone would be that interested in performing, because it's actually the only way you can pull this off is to do it about that slowly. It would be very hard to sing compared to any other. I mean, you could incorporate this into something. This wasn't written to be something that I really necessarily expect to hear performed. But it was an interesting exercise. I use it as a teaching exercise to then demonstrate the concepts, talk through the concepts that went into it. But it also helped me as a composer to really have to think through some of the problems that are inherent in writing these arrangements and to get better at solving them. And in the course of doing it, I looked at how other people solved similar problems and was able to look at that sort of thing. Ukulele chords. So okay, so ukulele chords. No, I mean these are I installed these. What you missed, if you just scroll up in the chat, you'll see I posted a link to where you can download these from. But you can create them yourself, even if you didn't have them already. You can just. Looks like I accidentally added a ukulele chord. I didn't mean to. But so all I have to do is add a regular guitar chord, and here's a little hint. If you're not aware of this already, ukulele chords are really guitar chords shifted by a fifth, right? Because the tuning is a fifth off. Yeah, no, it's not entirely true, but it sort of works that way. So if I take a G chord, but then I remove the G and call it a C chord, then I can go in here, click the thing, and tell it, no, there's only 4 strings, boom, boom. Well, now it's a ukulele C chord. And then I can drag that sucker back to my palette. So you can create your own custom ukulele chords really easily. I mean, I just did. In that time, I just created my own custom C chord, and then you can fill up your own palette of those. But if you follow that link, you'll see there's a palette you can install. The downside is it doesn't have the chord symbol itself attached to it, because the person who created these didn't have, well, that feature didn't exist yet, the ability to attach a chord symbol to the fret diagram. Has someone else later done that? Because you would think that maybe by now someone has updated it. Relatively new. Ooh, here we go. Here's a better version. I think this version then is the version that would actually be a little better. So let's find out about this version, shall we? So I downloaded it, and then come back to MuseScore, and I'm now going to right-click here, load palette, and I will load Didn't I just download it? I thought I downloaded it. Did I put it somewhere wrong? All right, I'll try downloading it again. Click. MuseScore 3. There it is. It's in my MuseScore 3 folder, so why did it not show up when I just right-clicked here? Am I doing something wrong? Am I in the wrong folder? That could be. Load palette. Yeah, I don't know why it's not finding that, but I got to it this way before. Maybe it's just, not sure what's going on, because that's just the same one again. Yeah, that's the same one again. So obviously I'm doing something silly wrong, and I would like, oh, that's because that's a score. That's not the, I see, that's a score. That's not a palette. That's weird. So this one, we'll see if this is the updated version or not. It may or may not be. So let's try this again. Load palette. And see if this one's any better. And I will click here. This one has the chords in it. So yep, that is the version you want. That's got the chord symbols already attached. So nice. So I can now get rid of my old style ones here, because I don't need these guys anymore. Delete. I don't need it anymore. You can also just click it and press the delete button. Delete permanently. All right, so now I've got ukulele chords. So yeah, that idea that I did the SATB arrangement here of O Susanna as a teaching and learning exercise. I mean, imagine if you'd if this has any relevance to your life, and it does have some relevance to mine. I mean, as an arranger, writing for string quartets or writing for any form of writing for a saxophone section in a big band, whatever it is, the idea that you're going to want to deal with voice leading things, it comes up often. So why not practice it? In my case, as a person writing for jazz big band, the thing that comes up pretty often is what's called a saxophone solo. And so there's a specific thing that happens, and really what I just want to do is show you a finished one here. Somewhere in here is my soli. There it is. There's a whole skill of writing what you're about to hear. So when I say what you hear, what it is, it's a melody line. It's a melody line that is harmonized. So all 5 saxophones play that same rhythm, that same melody line, but it's harmonized. So and then this version is and I can't sing all these things because they're way too hard to sing. But it's not, so it's the same rhythm, the same contour that everyone has, but it's harmonized. So that it's each one of these notes is a full chord. Well, in the jazz big band arranging world, this is like a thing that you spend a lot of time learning to do well. And I've only spent a little bit of time on this. I've written a few big band arrangements, I've done some exercises here and there, but really, if I want to be a good big band arranger, or if I want to do this more, I want to be faster at this, this is something I should start practicing. And I think I'm going to, when I decide to focus on this. So what am I clicking on to play one step? Okay, so what I did, I didn't play it. I'm just using the arrow keys. See down at the bottom where it says right? So I'm just moving one key at a time. I'm just clicking. I'm just right. However, if you want to hear just one staff at a time, that's certainly easy enough. I bring up the mixer and I solo the alto sax. So I do that, and now so that's how you do that. So when I just wanted to do it for a moment, it was easier just to click the notes and use the cursor keys, because that let me flip between things individually. Now I will say there is a feature that has been discussed for MuseScore and was actually implemented where you could select just like a passage like this and it would play just that passage. Cool feature, right? We'd all love to see that. It was implemented. It actually went out in one of the beta versions or a release candidate or something. However, a big however, a lot of times people want to start playback somewhere and you just click a measure to start playback there. Well, that stopped working. It made it only play back that measure. And so people were like, what? How do I play the whole score now? And so it became harder to figure out how to play the whole score. To me, that's a solvable problem, right? You just make shift click do one thing, or you have two different commands, or you solve that problem somehow. But unfortunately, we didn't have time to do it because it was that period like, oh, we've already release candidate. Between the release candidate and the real release, we only wanted to fix crucial bugs. So we just backed that feature off with the assumption we'd put it back later. Later just hasn't happened yet. There's almost no way it's not going to happen for MuseScore 4, though. MuseScore 4 is going to be a big push on playback and sequencing type of features. So anyhow, there's that. So the skills that go into writing these solis is what they're called. Soli, like the plural of solo. It's like this melody. That's like a solo. It's like an improvised solo. It's conceptually supposed to have the fluidity, the sense of being the type of line someone might have improvised, but it's composed. But then you harmonize it for multiple horns, so it's like multiple solos, so it's a soli. That's the idea. The skills that go into that, how to harmonize each note of this melody with a slightly different chord. Like there's a chord that's happening. The chord there is supposed to be a B flat 7 chord. Well, I pretty much guarantee that while I'm arpeggiating this B flat chord, I'm using a B flat chord, and just everyone's arpeggiating that B flat chord. But then when the melody starts doing things like moving in steps, having passing tones, well, we need to incorporate passing tones into the harmony parts too. And then there's all these skills, all these techniques for how you go about doing that are really cool and really worth learning how to do. But they take time to do well. And this is just one of those things that, if you're going to be a big band arranger, it's worth it to spend 15 minutes a day or a week or whatever it is just working on solis. Sort of random discussions come up, like about ukulele chords, and then that got into a discussion of palette customization and other things. So this is all great. By all means, keep asking questions, keep commenting on whatever. Anyhow, I would love to see people thinking about, well, what are the things I want to use MuseScore for? And just really incorporating that more into what you're doing and saying, okay, I want to practice doing this and just get good at it. What you don't want is to be in the situation where you always forget how to do something or it's a struggle every time you do it. There's some things in MuseScore that might be a struggle the first time you do them because it takes a while to figure it out, and maybe you never figure it out until you spend a long time beating your head against the wall with it, and then finally decide to ask for help. And then you realize there was an easier way to do it. Because usually there is. Usually it might not be the easiest to discover, but I like showing off all these different shortcuts and things and these customization possibilities that exist. To really kind of improve your workflow with things. And the way you get good at doing that is by doing it a lot and realizing, well, what things are even worth doing. And just the fact that I created a custom workspace for myself. This is not my most current version, but check out what I've got up here at the top. I created a palette that I call Layout. How did I do that? Well, I just add palettes. I went add palette, create custom palette, and I called it another custom palette. And now I have another custom palette. And you can see that all I have to do is drag things into it from another palette. So if I know that, gee, I use this, I don't know, I write a lot in the key of A. So by gosh, I want to drag that A. Can I drag? Come on. What is going on? Something. Well, that's weird. Do I have to double click? No, I don't have to double click to drag. Something's happening weird with my thing right now, because there we go. I knew that was the thing. There we go. Now I've just dragged my knot, get the control and the shift. Let's try that again. So part of what happens here is while I'm broadcasting, I've got this thing down at the bottom. You can see that is intercepting my keystrokes. Unfortunately, that thing it's intercepting them so that you can see what I'm doing. Unfortunately, that same thing actually gets in the way sometimes. It actually makes things Control, Shift, right click. Oh my gosh. It's reinterpreting that click as a right click because Control click is the same as right click normally. So I would say when I'm not broadcasting my keystrokes, that Control Shift drag. But I did Control Shift drag earlier and it worked because that's how I got that. That's how I got the whatchamacallit, the ukulele palette back in there. So oh, there it is. I don't know what happened. I guess the clicking, the physical clicking of my touchpad versus tapping works differently. Anyhow, Control Shift drag, you can populate from your score. So you can enter some text that you use a lot, enter some customized shape that you use a lot, and then add that to your custom palette. So I have a custom palette here that just has all these layout related things that I've dragged in from other palettes. These are the different breaks. These are the spacers, but then here are double bar lines, repeats, and here are the frames. I use those things a lot when I'm creating especially educational worksheets that need to be laid out a particular way. I use these a lot, so I just wanted them all in one place. Okay, this palette is silly. So, been any updates on harmonic notations? Okay, so the deal for harmonics is, so there is the basic harmonic symbol exists already. And let me undo all my changes from this score here. Go here. So the basic symbol, in fact, let me add a guitar to this. The basic symbol for a harmonic exists. And actually there's multiple symbols for harmonics, and there's artificial harmonics and natural harmonics and all this business. And if you're a guitar player, you know more about it than me. But I can tell you there's a couple different things, and if you go to the articulations palette, I think I hit it because I don't use that symbol. So I click more here. Are any of these it? Is this the one I want? Oh, harmonic, there it is. All right, so this is the harmonic symbol. Now, when it comes to playback, obviously that didn't do anything. I believe that should have had the effect of playing it an octave higher. I think that's true. So here's what I'm going to do. Play an octave higher. I'm going to move that note an octave higher, but I'm going to come over here to the inspector, and then I'm going to say fix to line, and then move it there. So now this is really the high E, but it's going to display on that line. So it doesn't have the sound of a true harmonic. If I wanted to get that fancy with it, I certainly can. I can add a staff text here, harmonic. I can make it invisible so I don't need to see it. And then I can go to staff text properties and actually change to, well, there's a couple other channels here. I'll just switch to the jazz channel, which doesn't really make sense, except I can then go to the mixer and open up the guitar strip and then take this jazz channel and change its sound. So I'll click that sound, and instead of being jazz guitar, it'll be guitar harmonics. Bingo. So now it's a harmonic. Right? Now, is that the pitch that I wanted? I don't know. That you can decide it. But anyhow, that's how you can do these things now. Okay. So, for tablature, the same concept happens. I would say the diamond head in tablature, is that really how that's done? But I can certainly change that to a diamond head. Head scheme. No, head group. So I've got a diamond and I got diamond old. So a couple different diamonds, and because there were a couple different diamonds. And then there's also, I think, mi. The solfege syllable mi also takes a diamond head. So you got a couple different variations of diamond type heads to choose from. Now, I don't know about doing that in tablature, to be honest, because I don't think they use, it doesn't, they use numbers. So I don't know how so you want to see square brackets around the fret number. All right, well, that much I can certainly do. So adding round brackets is built in. If I go to the note heads palette, boom, that adds round note heads around it. Now, what I could then do, so I don't think there's any way to make those be square, but all these are symbols. So if you look over here at the inspector, you can see that, I guess, automatic placement positioned them nicely already. So if I do this manually, I'm going to have to do that manually. But anyhow, I will go ahead and add these things. There is, let's see if I type harmonic in here. So the standard, the standard for fonts, for music fonts, doesn't know about that bracket system apparently for harmonics, but it certainly has brackets that I can add. Left bracket, are any of these specifically double height? I don't know if any of these are specifically the one that we want. I think those are accidental brackets. That'll probably be good enough. I'll add myself one of those. So what I'll do is select my note and then double click this. Boy, I would have liked to have thought that would have added the symbol, but I'm not seeing it appear. And maybe tablature just doesn't have that supported. That would kind of be a shame if so. It just doesn't seem to want to show up. So to be honest, I don't know the answer. What's going on with that? I feel like I added. In fact, I know I added it because check it out. I click this. Now look at the bottom of the screen. It says note. I'm going to hit Alt right. Alt right moves symbol by symbol, and you can see there's the symbol right down in the status bar. I can see that I have a symbol selected, but it's not showing up. And if I start changing the position of that symbol, oh, there it is. It was just hiding. I was hiding behind the fret mark. Okay, so I guess I need to double click it and use the arrow keys. Anyhow, what I could do then, I've now added a zillion of these things, right? But check this out now. get that thing about where I want it, and Control-Shift-Drag. Bam. All right, now I don't know if that, some things the position adjustment gets saved and some things it doesn't, but let's find out. It did not. So I'm going to have to use the inspector. There is actually a way to double click something even when you can't see it. There. So yeah, some things, those manual adjustments get saved and you move it to the palette, and other things don't. So the round parentheses certainly works. The other thing that works also that, okay, here's maybe a better way about it. What if I just typed it as text? In fact, what if I do it as fingering? Okay, I'm going to try this. I'm going to add this as fingering. We're learning together, right? I'm going to go to the fingering palette. I'm going to add a left-hand fingering. Oh, fingerings by default don't show up on tab saves because normally they wouldn't, but I'm going to make it do so. So bear with me. Go in here and advanced style properties, show fingering. There we go. All right, so let's try that again. So I've added this thing, and now I'm going to edit it to be boom. Oops. Because it's a fingering, if I want to add spaces in it, I do it with Control Space. All right, so now I've created some room. Now, automatic placement is trying to push this off to the side, but all I have to do is disable automatic placement for that thing and reset. Well, actually, I would have thought that disabling automatic placement would have been the right thing. Let me re-enable that for a second. I implemented some of this stuff I should know. Reset the position. I guess I'm going to have to still position it manually. And I don't need to disable autoplace for it. But that wasn't too bad. So now what I could do is add this thing to my palette. And I'll add it to my fingering palette. And now let's see if I add another note. 5. I think it's going to also show up to the side, and I'm going to have to manually move it, but that didn't take that long. So there's a way of doing that. There's always a way of doing things. Now, it would certainly be possible. I don't think anyone has requested this particular symbol. Most of the requests for symbols for harmonics have involved the note head symbols and the circle symbols. I don't know that anyone has specifically requested this before, or maybe I've just missed it. But just adding that symbol to the palette and then making it behave more properly, that would be a very simple thing to do. And so if you submit a request on to the issue tracker, basically go to help, report a bug. It's not really a bug, but it'll take you to the issue tracker, and then change where it says, well, severity, change it to suggestion, and then you can write up your description of everything and submit that. So yeah, and the less than greater than signs, if that's what you prefer, also that's cool. Anyhow, I've been talking about a lot of different things here, and I don't know that there was an overall point to everything. It was just a way of getting some topics, really. So I think I'm going to get ready to sign off here. If there's any last questions to address, I will. But next week, I'm going to assume, well, no, I'm not going to assume anything. There's a pretty good chance MuseScore 3.5 will have officially released. So this release candidate, I would love it if people watching this would download it, try it out, beat it up, see if you can find anything broken in it, especially things that worked in 3.4 but are broken in 3.5. Those are the things we absolutely are going to want to fix before 3.5 really comes out. Other things we'll fix after 3.5 comes out, but it's the regressions, the things that used to work and that 3.5 actually broke. Those are the things we most want to fix. So by all means, any problems you find, submit. But that's why we're having this really big push to try to get people to install this and test it. So assuming that 3.5 is out for real next week, I will probably be talking about that for Café next week. Other than that, As always, I love it when people give me your ideas for things you'd like to hear me talk about. I did, by the way, talk about guitar for an entire session. Like, was it last week? 2 weeks ago? I forget. 3 years ago, for all I know. No, it was a week or two ago. I talked about guitar and really talked about a lot of things, but really didn't talk about tablature much. Talked about more about the overall concepts of writing for guitar. Yeah, I'm always open to suggestions. You can just email me, Marc with a C at musescore.com, or leave comments here on this video, or however you know to reach me. That go ahead and reach me and give me your suggestions for future cafe topics. All right, so all that said, I think I will get on with other things for today and get to my routine of what I like to do on Wednesday, which includes the cafe. It also includes a class I teach at night and some things I like to get done on Wednesday afternoons. I've been structuring my days a little bit more to get done the things that I want to get done by sort of planning which days I do which things, and that was one of the things that that sort of prompted me to even pick this topic here. Okay, so you are totally welcome. Glad that you're enjoying these, and I will see everyone next week. So have a good week, and until next time, bye.